Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jim Hodges. I'm President and CEO of McGuireWoods Consulting. We are co-sponsoring this event today with our friends from Impact Public Affairs. Companies are taking a close look at their social responsibilities these days, and engaging employees in the elections process in a nonpartisan way is a very important part of that. Today's panel is about this. It's about finding ways to engage employees in a nonpartisan way in the elections process. We're fortunate to have a great team composed of McGuireWoods Consulting employees and those of Impact Public Affairs. Our first panelist today will be my colleague in Atlanta, Danica Thompson. Danica?
Thanks, Governor. Recently, companies have been asking us about employee voter engagement and what this type of nonpartisan program could look like in their organization. We'll talk through the basics of the program today, as well as discuss the importance of environmental, social, and governance standards, and how this framework has become commonplace in the discussions on how a company contributes to the communities in which it operates and how it treats its employees. Encouraging basic civic engagement, like voting, among your employee base is a great initial step to building the framework for this kind of long-term internal engagement. Employees will appreciate a company that takes a proactive approach to creating a conversation around issues affecting their daily lives outside of the workplace. Facilitating conversations with your employees about issues that not only matter to your business, but also the communities you work in, can demonstrate your company's values and priorities and foster employee loyalty. To talk more about why voter engagement matters, I'd like to introduce my colleague, Tony Gaius, and our friend and partner from Impact Public Affairs, Nick Giuliano.
Thanks so much, Danica. Hi, everyone. I'm Nick Giuliano, and I'm a partner at Impact Public Affairs. Thanks for tuning in today and for the opportunity to talk with you a little bit. For a bit of background on who I am, I started my career in politics going door to door, asking for donations to the Democratic Party of Georgia as a field organizer in 2009. I went on to work on campaigns at the state, local, and federal levels, including the 2012 Obama re-elect. I was then a staffer for the Atlanta City Council and the mayor's office, and I've spent the past 7 years as a lobbyist representing companies before government, managing issue campaigns, and handling strategic and crisis communications. In the years since I've started doing this work, I think the two greatest themes to dominate American politics have been hyperpartisanship and nationalization of issues. Most people feel like they belong to a tribe more so now than in the past, and the issues they see being debated in D.C. by national figures largely override a lot of what goes on back home. Voters on both sides of the aisle vehemently believe that they are right, and the other side is not just wrong, but many times actively an enemy. This is a very fraught political environment, and it has coincided with companies being scrutinized by investors, special interests, activist groups, and their own employees for how they relate to the social and political issues of the day. So increasingly, environmental, social, and governance matters, the E, S, and G mentioned by Danica just now, are a prime focus for Wall Street and Main Street alike. How companies handle voting is increasingly important, and I'll argue that it can be a key ESG differentiator for your company. A CNBC study from 2018 showed that 44% of U.S. workplaces were planning on giving workers paid time off to vote. That number has probably gone up a little bit since that 2018 study, but it's safe to assume it is still below 50%. Providing some paid time off to your employees so that they can vote and making sure that they know what their voting options are, such as requesting absentee ballots and early voting, is a great nonpartisan way to show that your company cares about the process and recognizes that many of the people in your offices likely feel more connected to this election than previous cycles. We've seen many of the nation's leading private employers take steps over the last year to provide paid time off in the form of hour blocks or even a full day off for election day. Walmart, for example, is giving all of its 1.5 million associates 3 hours off. Patagonia stores are outright closing on election day for the second general election cycle in a row now in 2020. Starbucks, Coca-Cola, Target, Old Navy, Twitter, and Uber are more brands that have followed suit by making time available for workers or giving the whole day off. To talk a bit about how campaigns are seeing this moment, Tony Gaius will take it from here.
Thanks, Nick, and thank you to Governor Hodges and also to Danica. And Nick, it's been a pleasure to work with you and Impact Public Affairs on this issue, and I look forward to our continued collaboration. To those on the call, thank you for allowing me to be on the team to discuss voter engagement with you today. Again, my name is Tony Gaius, and I work in the McGuireWoods Consulting Austin office, doing advocacy work in Texas and throughout the country. In a previous life, my career was solely focused on voters. I worked on both the 2000 and 2004 George W. Bush campaigns, and despite now living back in Austin, I worked on 3 statewide Virginia political campaigns and the White House Office of Political Affairs for the Republican National Committee during the Bush administration. Again, my career was focused on voter outreach, voter engagement, and voter turnout. And I'm excited to see that McGuireWoods has developed tools that help companies and associations put their best foot forward with helping their employees navigate the election process. Harvard Business Review did a study about a year ago regarding the effects of companies encouraging voter engagement. They noted that previous studies had shown that employees and consumers are more loyal to brands that reflect their political values. However, they also alienated employees and consumers in today's environment. To that end, the Harvard Business Review study showed a, quote, sweet spot for firms being pro-democracy and pro-voter without being partisan. That is what we are going to offer and what Abigail and Travis will be discussing. Now, if you logged on to social media, turned on to television recently, you saw that earlier this week was National Voter Registration Day. Some companies are using these platforms to reach their customer base as well as their employees with regards to voting. There will almost be an expectation from your employees on how their company commutes to them about the upcoming election. What might have been seen previously as a luxury may be turning into a necessity from an employer's perspective. Given the current climate and new reported voter registration numbers, the consensus is that 2020 will be a record-breaking election year. 2018, the midterms, saw an increase of voter turnout of 27% over the previous midterms in 2014, making it the highest turnout in nearly 40 years. If this holds true for the presidential election, which frankly I feel most believe the number will increase still, we can expect at least an additional 37 million votes cast in 2020. Portions of that increase in 2018 were attributed to a whopping 79% jump in votes from 18 to 29-year-olds. These are those, many of whom, that are just now entering the workforce. These new voters, the young and otherwise, will undoubtedly include your employee, and it will be imperative to reach out to them. We have different, tailored ways to do this, and each are multifaceted. When I was at the Republican National Committee, we had what we called the Rule of 8 when it came to engaging voters. This rule showed that 8 touches through different means was the magic number to get a person to vote. Now, we can envelop these touches in more efficient and strategic ways. And it's my privilege to turn it over to my colleagues, Abigail Floyd and Travis Blankenship, who have developed these strategies and tactics to help increase your employees' awareness for voter engagement. Travis?
Thanks, Tony. And also thank you, Nick, Danica, and Governor Hodges for that overview of why companies should undertake these important efforts on employee voter engagement in this election. And thank you to everyone for joining us today. I'm going to talk briefly about how popular this issue has become this cycle, and then dive into some of the specific nonpartisan content you can share with your employees and best practices for doing so. As Tony mentioned, if you checked your social media earlier this week on National Voter Registration Day, chances are you saw paid ads from a variety of companies and third-party organizations urging you to register to vote. Now with just 40 days until Election Day, let's talk about what else employers can do to increase voter participation among employees. Companies are taking a variety of actions to increase participation. While some of the particular efforts highlighted in recent business coverage go beyond the purposes of this presentation, it is good to get a sense of the broad opportunities that exist and the well-deserved recognition these efforts can receive. Many resources also exist for companies to add their support for various nonpartisan election-related efforts. Again, these organizations have their broader missions than just engaging your employees to vote, but the landscape here is important context. For example, Time to Vote represents more than 1,100 companies that has received robust earned media coverage. Their particular focus is on employee time off to vote, as Nick mentioned earlier. So let's get into some specifics. As it was alluded to earlier, employees trust their employers. Not only that, it is becoming expected for employees to hear from their employer about the election. This presents a unique opportunity to lead successful voter engagement programs. With the right tone, message, and useful information, companies can have a major impact. There are 4 basic messages your voter engagement program should seek to deliver. Number 1, let employees know that their participation in the election process is both good for their communities and their company. An engaged and informed workforce simply yields better performance. Number 2, stress the importance of their vote and that it matters. Even if you think your workforce is engaged and informed, don't take that for granted. Chances are you do have employees who have become cynical about our elections and government more generally. Challenge that notion by stressing the importance of their participation in our elections. Number 3, create the atmosphere and mindset that all of your employees vote. No one wants to feel left out, and our political organizations have been using these social pressure tactics for years to drive turnout because it works, especially in high turnout years like 2020. Number 4, and most importantly, provide accurate and important information about how employees can cast their ballots this year and how to do it safely. In my previous roles doing campaigns and election work for issue-based organizations, one of the best tools we use for driving voter participation is having voters hear from other voters. This holds true with colleagues as well. Creating a simple yet effective colleague-to-colleague campaign is just one creative idea for encouraging turnout and giving employees the opportunity to hear from their peers on why voting is important to them. Another example may include a message from the C-suite or department managers to employees reminding them to vote. In addition to these communications, employers can create opportunities through virtual forums and happy hours to engage employees on the election, and can do so without getting partisan in any way. So thinking creatively about fun ways to make employees stop and think is ultimately the key to success here. So it's also important to keep this effort light, but informative. And with being informative, there's a lot of new and changing information out there, especially if your business footprint spans across many states. Just one example here shows the ranging policies for early voting in states. As many states have had or are in special sessions to address voting guidelines as it relates to the pandemic, voters are ultimately left to interpret this information thrown at them, and there's a lot of it. So as employers, there's a great opportunity to be that trusted resource. As you're well aware, voters in many states have expanded options for casting their ballots in 2020. Not only do these options vary by state, but many even vary by locality in terms of drop box and drive-through locations. Needless to say, gathering and packaging this information in an easy-to-understand fashion is invaluable. Between the major political party campaigns and outside organizations, voters are likely to receive a lot of information, but it's important to have an employer's voice that can cut through the noise and give nonpartisan facts employees can trust. Companies nationwide are recognizing the importance of employee voter engagement efforts because as leaders in their communities, these efforts demonstrate their company values. So these are some of the basics that we can help your company deliver to employees in the last days of the 2020 election. I will now turn it over to Abigail to talk about how you can creatively and effectively reach your employees and to highlight important metrics for success. Abigail?
Thank you, Travis, for giving us an overview about the best practices for voter engagement and voter participation. I'm Abigail Floyd, and Assistant Vice President of Digital at McGuireWoods Consulting on our advocacy team. Thank you for your time today. I'll be diving into specific tactics and tools that can be used to share the 4 basic messages that Travis has detailed in his presentation. The first step is to inventory the various assets that are already in place that you could utilize. Here are just a few examples that you may have at your company. Announcement boards in TVs and break rooms and throughout the office, as well as employee portals such as an intranet or other internal means of communication. Communications placed in break rooms or cafeterias are one way to reach employees who perform non-traditional office jobs, such as in manufacturing roles. Additionally, with the rise of employees who work in the gig economy, identify regular channels of communication that you could use to effectively reach these employees. This could include something such as push notifications, if that is one way how you communicate with these employees. Other more digital ways to reach employees include emails branded with your company logo and colors that detail information for your employees. You can also use social media tools to target only employees on social media channels with information. Additionally, text messages with proper opt-in requirements are a quick and easy way for employees to receive your message. As Tony mentioned, there is the rule of 8 for voter turnout. This same rule should be applied to your voter engagement program. Create a plan to touch employees several times using a variety of methods, including those that I have mentioned. Now that you've implemented your voter engagement program, it's important to assess the results and evaluate the outcomes for your company. We recommend beginning with a survey of employees to determine the effectiveness of the program. Some questions you could ask your employees are, did your employees like the content? Did the content and information change their mind about voting? Did they actually vote? Did the information that was provided make it easier for them to vote, especially during these times when there are new and different ways for employees to vote safely? Outcomes for your company could include an increased sense of connectedness and community among your employees. By sharing information on how to safely vote during the pandemic, employees may also feel supported by their company. Based on the Harvard Business Review study that Tony mentioned, employees may also have an increased sense of loyalty to your company. Additionally, a voter engagement program helps to lay the foundation to create engaged employees who are motivated to become advocates and ambassadors on behalf of your company. I shared just a variety of ways to share voter engagement information with your employees, and these are just a few of the benefits for both your employees and your company when you implement a voter engagement strategy. Now I will turn it over to my colleague Michael, who will discuss how voter engagement sets the foundation for state and local election engagement and for the 2021 session. Michael?
Thank you, Abigail. Well, most of the stuff we've heard here today is about voter engagement and how it can affect your ESG rating. The opportunity to engage your employees will last long after the November election. In early 2021, a large number of state legislatures will convene for their annual legislative sessions. While most of these legislatures will only be in session for a limited period of time, the policies they put forth and the laws they enact can greatly impact your company, your employees, and certainly your community. Both Impact Public Affairs and McGuireWoods Consulting have a tremendous amount of experience in helping companies engage their employees in reaching out to their elected officials to make sure that their concerns and opinions on these policies and laws that they're going to be enacted are heard. Again, if anyone on this, well, first of all, these can take many forms. We can do phone banking, email campaigns, letter writing, help build a program to let your business and your employees' concerns be heard at your elected levels. If anyone on this call would like more information about how they can how we can help you do that, please feel free to reach out to anyone here at Impact or MWC. We'll be glad to give you more information. There was one question in the chat, and it was from Mike Reynolds, and it was basically our company has a limited budget. How would a company with a limited budget help their employees engage in voter engagement? And probably the simplest way to do that, we've heard several on the call, but a great way is most states now have early voting. A simple way would designate someone at your company to find out where the early voting places are and what the times are, and email all your employees and let them know where the nearest one to their location is and what times, and possibly giving them, again, as I think Nick said earlier, a lot of companies are giving people time off to vote. So there's a lot of things that a company can do that don't require a lot of cost. So that would be my answer to that question. If there are no other questions, this pretty much concludes the program for today. We hope this was informative. And again, if anyone has any questions or any follow-up needs, please feel free to reach out to any of us here at Impact or McGuireWoods.
Thank you very much.